All right, everyone, welcome back to the channel, Doc Collectibles. My name today is Doctor of Figanomics, and I am once again joined by Cousin Joe, or as I'm going to refer to him today, how many Gambit figures do you need? Joe, how's it going?
Pretty good. Go through rehab for all these gambits.
All right, so as you can see behind me, we're going to go through some basic Figanomics, which is, kind of their price range, their availability. We're going to talk about articulation, quality, which will basically be our opinions.
You also mentioned maybe we'll talk about some of the accessories they come with and things like that.
We'll start with Hasbro's. Hasbro makes a bunch of different, or they have a bunch of different licenses, let's say. So they currently make Marvel Legends. They have the G.I. Joe figures that have just come out recently. They have Star Wars. They have Ghostbusters. They have Transformers, Power Rangers as well. So Hasbro has a lot of different properties that they can pull from. The price ranges are somewhere between $22, $23, all the way up to maybe $50, somewhere in there for these figures. I have a Marvel Select here out of the box. Do you happen to have one in box, Andy?
A retro card gambit here that made it look like the old Kenner figures from the 90s. And this is more what the deluxe figures look like here, deluxe Thanos. So these will be a little bit more expensive, but obviously they're a lot bigger. Typically, a lot of these they'll take one of the Build-A-Figures and then re-release it as a deluxe figure.
All right, so I have a few examples out of box. So I just picked up the Captain America Zombie, or Zombie Cap. So here that is. Right. So this one's actually a pretty cool figure. It's got like the big chunks out of the legs and things. There's a big hole through his thigh here. So it's very detailed for the size. I think one of the greatest things about these figures is their articulation. So I'll have to look up the exact number of points of articulation. But just for instance, I'm sitting here messing with his ankle. So his ankle has a lot of tilt this way. And in fact, it's kind of got a little ball in here. So you can kind of go this way as well. So you got
a lot of them have like the double jointed elbows and knees also.
Yeah, so you can see that here, the knee, right? It can bend here at the bottom. Sorry, he's a little stiff. So it bends here and it also bends down here.
They do have a lot of points of articulation, but it is hit or miss, like on how stiff they are. You might be afraid you're going to break it. So that's one problem that happens occasionally, but usually they're pretty good with that.
Another thing I'll point out is dioramas. If you want to, we have really these two options all the time. And I just watched a video from Nerd Zoic, and he was talking about, should you keep your figures in box or display them out of the box? And so, if you want, I can maybe link that at the bottom if people want to check that out. We could certainly have a discussion about that at some point. But I think these figures, obviously the artwork on the boxes look great, but they also are a lot of fun to pose. And, if you go ahead and make a diorama, right, because of their scale, it doesn't take up as much size, and they really turn out to look pretty darn good. So there's that one. And then, as you're saying, the deluxe. So I also happen to have the Hydra Stomper. So he was one of the deluxe that came out at the same time as the What If figures. Now, articulation's still pretty good for him. He's very stiff. I can't get his leg to bend right now. It's not
and
bad.
he would also go really well if you have the Captain Carter figure as well.
So See, I
you
mean,
pose them together.
I don't know why you'd want your figure to do a split like this, but he can do it. I would say for the average collector, or even for someone just starting out, these are a really great starting point.
I would agree. That's if you're a new collector or a collector on a budget, Marvel Legends is probably going to be your go-to. They make a ton of figures too. They make almost every character. They're constantly releasing new waves all the time, and most of the waves come with build-a-figure pieces as well. If that's something you're interested in, you want to collect the whole wave, then you get another figure out of it.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that because I also happen to have the Ant-Man Build-A-Figure here. Before I go into that, though, I did want to say, we're specifically talking about Marvel Legends, but we talked about, or I mentioned those other properties they have, right? So, when we're saying a good starting point for someone that's into Marvel, you don't have to just like Marvel, right?
Right. Yeah. The Star Wars Black series is very popular too. I think they're really nice figures. I personally haven't bought any of them just because that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. There's so many characters, and I just don't have the money or the space to start collecting them. But if you're into Star Wars, they definitely make good Star Wars figures also.
I was going to take a few pieces off of my Ant-Man here to demonstrate how you would build one of these guys. So, you buy a figure, you get an arm in a pack, right? You buy another one of the figures, you get his head, right? And then you put them all together. Right, I'll pop his head back on here, and you pop the arm back in here, and you've now got Giant Man or Giant Ant-Man if you want, right? And just to give you some scale, right? Here is Zombie Cap and Giant Ant-Man. Now, again, they did re-release this guy so that if you miss out or you're not interested in buying the entire wave, we're being joined by Loki as well today. If you don't want to buy the entire wave of figures to build the figure, which is kind of a lot of the fun that I find, they have, as you said, re-released these figures on the premium scale, I guess, or the premium level. So they cost a little bit more, but there are sometimes other options to get the build-a-figures. I'm trying to get at.
One thing that can be a little annoying about that is like a lot of times when they release a wave, they'll have some like obscure characters that nobody's really that interested in, but you have to buy them to get the build-a-figure piece. I mean, it's cool if that's a character you like and they actually made that character like you never think, but it's also kind of annoying if you want to buy all the build-a-figure pieces, then you got to buy this figure you're not really interested in. But another good thing about the Hasbro's is when we were talking about the accessories, a lot of times they come with extra head sculpts and hands and other things you can switch out. It makes them very customizable, and you can always put them in different poses, change the head sculpts or whatever if you get tired of one or the other. I always thought that was pretty cool too, because most of the pieces are compatible with all of their figures. Like the head sculpts will fit on almost any Hasbro figure.
All right, so I think that wraps up Hasbro and or at least our discussion on the Marvel figures. Let's talk a little bit about Marvel Select, or sorry, I should say Diamond Select. Right, again, they have a multitude of properties. Let me just mention those. So doing some very quick research, Diamond Select has Marvel. They have G.I. Joe, Ghostbusters, Cobra Kai, Transformers, Power Rangers, and Mortal Kombat. Now, in terms of figures, I know that they have Marvel, they have Ghostbusters, and I believe they're about to release some Cobra Kai. I think they have horror as well. I know they did Nightmare Before Christmas.
They have a ton of stuff that they've made. Also the Jay and Silent Bob ones they have. but their main one is the Marvel Selects.
Okay. So I'm going to share my select. Looks like a cover from The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I will say that playability, if you were to take this out, is not very good. You know, there's a decent amount of articulation, but for instance, the Goblin here, his knees do not bend. Right, they are stuck in place. So there is that kind of hindrance. It does look fantastic. You do get, you know, you get Peter here wrapped up that he's pulling along. You get a little pumpkin bomb. I think this is his satchel here that he used to hold all of those in. You get the glider. Something else. Looks like a little stand inside here to hold them up. So I was pretty excited for this one for display purposes, right? To keep in box.
I will say that most of the selects are catered more towards displaying them in box. Like the one he just showed, for example, it looks really good. It's already in a cool pose. Those are my favorite ones that are like look like an iconic, either a comic book cover or like a movie or whatever. But yeah, I've been collecting the selects for a while. I kind of cooled off on buying them because I have so many and they take up a lot of space. But I typically keep those in box. I have a few that are out of box, not many. They're a little bit bigger than your Marvel Legends. So if you were looking to combine or mix and match, they don't quite match up. You can kind of see that Hawkeye's a little bit taller than Wolverine here, but I believe in real life, Hugh Jackman would probably be towering over Jeremy Renner here. Hugh Jackman's a pretty tall guy.
To go along with that, Joe, I will say that certain figures, you know, with Hasbro or the Legends, they don't quite make them big enough. And so, you know, some of the select figures actually do, I think, mix pretty well. So yeah, obviously not every single one because they're not on the same scale. So I have the select Thanos here out of the box. So I got this. He was in a box that had been sitting out in the sun, and I really kind of wanted to take him out anyway. I thought he was pretty cool. So his scale, again, compared to, say, the zombie here, right? I think that's pretty good, actually.
I do think the larger figures do, like your Juggernauts and your the Thing and Hulk and stuff like that, because then it really shows like how massive they are. I think this might be a better example. Like this Doctor Strange select is pretty tall. Like I said, compared to Wolverine here, you can kind of see these are typically around 7 inches or so, where these are mostly around 6 inches.
So one thing that I wanted to add, Joe, was shelf presence. So if you keep the selects in box, right, the way that they're packaged, the box itself isn't really impressive. The way that they're packaged sometimes is. So by that I mean, you know, if sometimes figures can be posed in box, and that pose is iconic, or you know, just looks good enough that you'd want to keep them that way. So for instance, you know, the one I was talking about here. So, you know, I think a lot of those are great, you know, to keep in box when they're displayed in specific manners. The Marvel Selects, however, are not often posed in the boxes. Now, they take up a hell of a lot less room than these boxes do. So if you know you have a small area that you're packing these things into, you know, you could leave them in the box and pin them up on the wall if you wanted. And thank you for sharing all these, by the way.
This is a a good chunk of my collection, not all of them. As you can see, the boxes are very bulky. So that kind of stinks a little bit, but
Selects typically go for right around $25 or $30, something like that. And another thing that we should have mentioned for Hasbro, by the way, right? You know, you can get Hasbro figures at Target, Walmart, when they actually have stuff in. Where are some other places? GameStop. I'm trying to think of maybe.
pretty much any retail store that sells action figures, there's a good chance they're probably going to have them.
All right, so back to the selects. So Marvel selects, we said were right around $25 to $30. You can pick those up at the Disney store. The other franchises, I think sometimes maybe you see them at like a Spencer's or a Hot Topic, maybe.
They used to carry them. You don't see them too often anymore. Like FYE and Suncoast and places like that used to have some of them. They are harder to find in store. It's more something you probably order online, but you can come across one occasionally.
I think that wraps up Marvel Select or Diamond Select figures. So let's go ahead and move on and talk a little bit about McFarlane. So McFarlane is now making DC figures. They're making a pretty big push with those. I think they're on like series 22, something like that.
Not to cut you off, but I would say that McFarlane's probably DC's equivalent to Hasbro. As far as the availability, the amount of figures they're producing, and the price point is right around the same as what you pay for the Marvel Legends.
So obviously McFarlane's kind of claim to fame is Spawn, and also having some connection to Venom, right? So currently they have licenses for Spawn. They have, I think it was Mortal Kombat. They're making those Mortal Kombat figures, and they also have DC. So I do have a DC multiverse figure.
And I'm not sure if they still make them, but the thing that McFarlane really got popular with the toys used to be the sports figures. Probably about 15, 20 years ago, they were super popular. They're not that popular now.
Yeah, I believe I still have quite a few of those, and I'm not sure if they still make them. I'd have to look into that. So.
I think they might, but they're not as available as they used to be because they're not as popular. I had a ton of them. I downsized quite a bit, but I did keep certain ones that I wanted to keep.
So I can't remember if I shared this last time, but I broke down. I really enjoyed the Peacemaker show that James Gunn wrote and directed. And, you know, I went against my gut and everything that I've ever believed in. And I went ahead and I purchased Peacemaker.
Never thought I'd see the day.
So I am officially an owner of a John Cena figurine. If you guys can actually see it in the box, let me know because I can't see him.
Is that pun intended?
Absolutely not. Now, one thing to mention here, well, I mean, there's plenty of things, but God. All right, so some of the things I wanted to mention with the McFarlane figures, specifically this DC one here, some of them, right, come with build-a-figure pieces, just like the Marvel Legends.
Like their articulation and the size is closer to a select. But as far as the price points and the availability and the popularity of them is more closer to the Marvel Legends, I think. And just like the Marvel Legends, these are available in most retail stores. You can find them.
right? So they're readily available. I picked that up at a Target, Walmart, your basic stores carry these guys. You said you have some that are out of box that you can share with us?
Yeah, just a few examples here. I have Batman Who Laughs here. I have a ton of Jokers, but I didn't want to pull every single one of them out. So this is one of my favorite ones here. They did a really good job with this Heath Ledger Joker. It even comes with a little display stand. Yeah, it's some pretty cool accessories and things with them. That was one of the first ones that I bought.
I like that
And
one.
I believe I picked them up at Target for like you said, it was around $25. They're rapidly putting out series after series after series. So there's a ton of them out there. If there's a particular comic you're into, or movie or cartoon or whatever, they've probably either made a figure of it or they have one that's going to be coming out soon.
One thing I was going to say was the first three that we talked about here, Hasbro, Marvel Select, or sorry, Diamond Select, and McFarlane, they make figures that are movie realistic, or at least somewhat. They make figures from cartoons, right, animated series, and they also make figures that kind of get pulled right out of the comic books. And that's kind of how I wanted to transition to this next company, which is NECA.
I would say their bread and butter is like movie realistic figures. They have a huge horror selection. So if you're into horror movies, NECA is the place to go. They've made pretty much every horror character, several different styles of each one from all different movies. So like they'll have like Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street 1, Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Jason from Friday the 13th Part 7, or they've made almost every one of them. And they've made almost every character. They have like Chucky and Leatherface and Ghostface and ton of other movies too, like Terminator. They have some pretty cool Back to the Future figures. Then they make the Turtle movie figures as well.
Yeah, so I actually picked up the Turtle movie figures from the second film, The Secret of the Ooze. Another thing to mention quickly, we're not getting into it too much. We will get to a few figures that are a little bigger, but they do also make
the quarter scale. Yeah, the large ones.
So in that, we know that they had Batman, they had the Turtles, a few other things I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think did they make the Bride of Chucky and Chucky, I think?
Yeah, I think they made a 2-pack. Their packaging is pretty cool too. It usually has like the box art has Velcro on it where you open it up and then it has the figure with all the accessories on the inside. And sometimes the box might have like a lenticular cover on it. I don't have any of those on hand to show, but they're pretty cool. They are a little bit more expensive than the other three that we mentioned. There's usually range between like $30 to $40 retail, and obviously more than that on the secondary market.
So this is Toka and Razor. But the detail of these are actually really good.
And even like some of the cartoony ones you were talking about, they have a cool like cell shaded graphic to them, so they look like they're straight out of the cartoon. So they definitely put a lot of work into their detail.
So like you can pop his mouth open here, right? Turtle there. And so yeah, his arm, and they packaged a lot of these like this. I don't know why it came out of the factory this way. My assumption is they put it in here, they pulled the arm back with this little tie that's in here,
and then it put it in an awkward pose,
pulled it back. But it scared me when I bought it. That's why I took it out of the box initially. I am planning on displaying these in a diorama just because of the detail. I think they're great.
Yeah, the NECA is great for anything you might be nostalgic about when it comes to the movies. Or
so NECA, their price points a little higher than the other figures. I think a typical figure is around 40, something like that, maybe 30, 40. 2-pack, 60 to 70, somewhere in there. Um, you can pick them up at Target. Does Walmart
Walmart.
sell that?
They do. They don't have a ton of them, but they have a little section where they have them there.
All right, so I think that'll wrap up our budget-friendly
Well,
section.
you forgot one more brand of budget friendly figs, and that would be Fig Newtons. Not an official sponsor of the show, but you can pick these up pretty much any store, and they're delicious.
All right, so the second tier would be something that maybe if you have some more expendable cash or looking for maybe a little higher quality product, you would go with something in this second column here. So first, let's start with Mafex. And Mafex currently owns rights to Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and I believe they actually have some sports figures as well. I think I saw, like LeBron and maybe Kobe. So Joe, you have a Mafex figure that you'd like to share, and while you're doing that, I'm gonna pull up some photos.
I do like the Mafex figures. I only own one at the moment. So I picked this Carnage up from a Big Bad Toy Store a while back. This is one of my favorites. Just a really good likeness. This looks like it was ripped right out of the Mark Bagley artwork from the original comic books. So I guess the big difference between these and what you would get with just your typical Marvel Legend figure, they come with a ton of extra accessories. There's so many different hands and all types of different things. This came with different head sculpts, and the articulation's a little bit more fine on these. So and unfortunately I don't have the box for this, but the box artwork looks really cool too. Maybe you might be able to find some examples of that online. But it's a pretty good product. It's definitely more expensive than what you pay for those first tier products we were talking about, but they're not the most expensive figures. And with the secondary market on Legends right now, you might even be able to get some of these for the same price, basically. And they mix and match pretty well with a Legends figure. Like the scale on these isn't really that far off. So if you had some of these and you had some Legends, you could put them on the same display and they would look pretty good together, I think.
I love that your go-to Legend is constantly sticking up his metaphorical middle finger. So I was just checking the price range that I saw for pre-orders, for other things, for retail for Mafex is somewhere around $68 to about $115. So your price point's getting a little higher there. I also went ahead and looked up a figure. So in particular, this time I just happened to choose Mr. Boba Fett over here. Since that show just ended. So this is a Star Wars Mafex Boba Fett. Now this one's actually from the Return of the Jedi. We'll just take a look at a few of the photos here. So articulation looks pretty decent. Looks like he does have double jointed knees. The detail is pretty good. One thing we haven't really mentioned thus far is kind of that the deco, right? The paint applications. And maybe that's because, when we're talking about that earlier set of figures, I have an example here, the Build-A-Figure Thor. You don't get a whole lot of colorations and a lot of different different looks in the deco, except for sometimes in kind of the hair. So here he is. Right, so for instance, like his coat, right, it's all just one color red. You don't really get any of the different shading and that sort of thing. But you can see some different coloration in his hair, for instance. Right, he's got these highlights and dark spots. But for this figure here, you know, we can certainly see those things. You can see the dings and dents and paint chips and so forth. So maybe let's take a look at another one here.
While you're doing that, I just looked and the Carnage was $94.99. I paid for that one. Okay. So that's probably one of the more expensive ones, but
this Batman here looks pretty good.
Christian Bale Batman.
It's the Christian Bale Batman, yeah. Now it looks like they have a soft cape. Right. Again, that's something that we didn't really get with those other sets of figures. We didn't get a whole lot of soft goods with them.
Yeah, these second tier figures typically have more soft goods, and I would guess that cape is probably wired also, so you could bend and pose it in different ways. And these figures, like we were saying before too, there's probably a lot more poses you can put them in than your typical, you know, $20 to $30 figure.
So let's take a look at this art box here for that Carnage figure that you have. So this is the original packaging that it came in.
Yeah, so it's just I like how it has, like, it almost looks like a comic book there with the on the left corner there. There was plenty of artwork all over the box.
All right, so let's continue with our short course on basic Figanomics and move on to SH Figuarts. Now, I'll be the first one to say, if you put the Mafex next to the Figuarts out of the box, I may not be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, a lot of these figures are similar. There are some differences. And you know, SH Figuarts, they're a Japanese-based company. They're made by Bandai. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them. They've made tons of things over the years: cartoons, action figures, all types of things.
See, that brings me to the properties. So SH Figuarts or Bandai have rights for Marvel, G.I. Joe, and Power Rangers that I saw. And price points, we're looking at somewhere around 70 to maybe 120.
Yeah, that's probably about right. Most of these are typically in the triple figures for the price point. If you see one that's like really cheap, like $30 on eBay, they do have a lot of Chinese knockoffs. These are Japanese-based figures, so if you see one from China and it's like, I don't know, like $25, $30 on eBay, then it's probably not the authentic figure.
Did you have one handy that you could show us, or?
I have some on display. All three of those figures are SH Figuarts figures.
Very cool.
So the one with the suit and the one with the hammer with the anvil, they were actually, it's the same figure, and it came with two different bodies. So I bought two of them so that I could make this setup here, and then I made that little stone thing out of styrofoam. That's actually one of the first Figuarts figures I bought. So the ones on the ends there, that's a Figuarts Doctor Strange.
So here is the Figuarts Doctor Strange. As you can see, this is up for pre-order, right? This isn't getting released until November, it says, and the price is $150.
Yeah, the Doctor Strange that I have is from the Doctor Strange film, the first one. They also made one from Infinity War, and I noticed that the Infinity War one, you can actually pose him where he was like going through all the different timelines with the time stone. So I thought that would be a pretty cool pose to put him in.
All right, so the next one is Mezco. And let's start with their properties. Mezco. So this is also called the 1/12 Collective. Now they have other figures, but the 1/12 Collective are typically the ones that you're going to find your Marvel, your DC figures. As far as I know, they do not have any other properties for those figures. Price point, I think they start somewhere around $70 and go up a little bit from there. So I don't have any Mezcos, so I'm gonna pull up a nice picture here for us just to look at.
The funny thing about Mezco is they're really hit or miss in my opinion. Like some of their figures, like I'm not a fan of at all, and then other ones I think look really good. They seem to really specialize in using a lot of soft goods also.
They kind of look like dolls in some ways, I guess, because of the soft goods.
And they have pretty good packaging with them too. Sometimes it'll come in like a box sleeve where you slide the sleeve out and it has everything inside. And other ones come in a tin box. You could probably guess which one I own.
By the way, I'm going to have a Gambit ticker somewhere on the screen.
This Gambit right here. This is by far my favorite Mezco that I've seen so far. I happened to see this actually in my local comic book store. Was surprised to see it there. I definitely wanted to pick it up, so I grabbed it right away. The jacket's really nice, like we were saying with the soft goods. Really high quality. I like the way, like his boots are kind of shiny there. Got a nice little shine to it. Came with some good accessories. I can't remember if it had an extra head sculpt. I think it did. I like this pose here was what I put it in. I'm not the greatest at posing, but
how
holding the cards there.
It's obviously a little hard to see the cards. How? No, I don't think it's going to focus on them.
Yeah.
How good would you say they look? Are they highly detailed?
They're detailed enough to where you can see that it's like an ace of hearts there. The back end of the cards, it has like the little patterns you'd see on like a deck of cards.
Okay.
And I just like this look for Gambit. Some Gambit looks are kind of funky and I'm not really a big fan of them. It came with this cool X base here, and he stands on it really well. That's something we haven't mentioned with some of these figures. Like, it's really hard to get them to stand up. Like, they keep falling over and everything. But this is a really nice base. It holds him pretty well. So, like, I'm balancing this on my hand, and he's not tilting or falling over.
All right, so I have a picture here. This is directly from Mezco's website. So this is their Fantastic Four set. So I'm hoping that you can see from this image pretty easily that the soft goods, right, the cloth, even for, I think, when these characters were created, is a little off. Not that it looks terrible. It doesn't look bad or anything. It's just...
Yeah, I mean, that would be an example of what I'm saying. Like certain ones, like, just not really a big fan of the look. Like that Thing one looks pretty cool. The Human Torch just looks really awkward to me.
I have to say that Mr. Fantastic's neck here looks really strange. They tried to make wrinkles and things in it, and it just, I don't know.
It is cool to have like a Mr. Fantastic that you can pose like that and actually show off how he can stretch and things like that. But he looks way better with that flame on look there than his regular Johnny look.
Well, see, these promotional pictures that they do a little bit of extra tooling as well. You can see these flames down here in the front. You know,
Yeah.
those are computer generated flames or a picture that they overlaid. Those aren't a part of the figure, so it does look a lot better. But they've also made it look even better by adding those things. Now it is pretty neat that they do have these extendable parts for Mr. Fantastic, so you can kind of it says interchangeable torso and arms, and then that strange neck piece that he has. So if you want to make giraffe Mr. Fantastic, you can do so. Now, one thing I've heard a lot of people complain about is Invisible Woman's face sculpt or head sculpt for a lot of these figures. This one isn't bad. I don't have any problem with it.
Like I said, it definitely looks more cartoony than realistic, but I guess this is supposed to emulate like their original comic book look.
This one's a good one. Now he does look weird there with the glasses.
The glasses look like they're down too far and they're almost like resting on his lip.
Right. All right. Anything else you would like to add about Mezco before we move to this last section, or this last type of tool?
In case you didn't think I had enough gambits there, there's a few more.
Uh-oh. Here goes the gambit counter.
Just do us a favor and don't play a drinking game where you drink every time I show a gambit figure. We don't want anybody to get sick.
It would be kind of funny though if the videos went viral just because somebody decided to start doing drinking games with silly stuff that we're doing. So last one here, we got Revoltech. So Revoltech, also called
Amazing Yamaguchi.
Now, I know for a fact that I got you one of these. I believe it was the Venom.
Yes.
So let me go through their properties quickly. So Amazing Yamaguchi, they have rights to Marvel, DC, and Transformers. And price point for them looks to be somewhere between 70 and 110, somewhere in there for retail.
That would be the Venom right here. The big bulky guy, lots of accessories. One thing though, this torso was really loose. That's why I don't want to move him around in the case too much. It's one of the reasons why I put him in here. One, to keep him from getting all dusty, but that's one thing about the Revoltex. They seem to be a lot more loose with the parts. Does anyone want to guess what other one I have? This one I haven't taken out of the box yet. So this is an example of what the box artwork looks like.
We're gonna have to do a giveaway for people guessing gambits or number of gambits featured.
I'm not a huge fan of the face on this one. I mean, they're definitely Japanese figures, so they seem like they're more anime style, which I'm not a big anime fan. But I did like some of the poses you can do with this figure, which is why I bought it. Let me get a light on this.
So sure, I can't see that.
So he fell over, but there's the Carnage one. As you can see, he has a ton of accessories. I snapped all those things on there, and I still had a bunch of them left over.
I'm going to be honest with you, Joe.
So many weapons.
It looks like a puddle of blood laying in there.
Yeah, it's because he fell over. But I also used one of the hands for this on this custom figure I made, this Cletus Cassidy. So what I did was that's a Lex Luthor DC figure, and I put a Cletus Cassidy head and that Carnage hand on there to give him like his prison outfit.
All right, so we've talked about your starter kit. We've talked about Loki jumping in the way of my board and literally blocking the second set that we just got done talking about, which
We
was
should have an outtakes video of this Loki blocking stuff.
finally we are at the coup de grace of figure collecting, at least in the realm of Marvel and Star Wars and DC and those sorts of properties. We are now finally talking about Hot Toys, Sideshow collectible figures, 1/6 scale, and other companies like So Toys and 3-0. So
Before we move on, can I request that we take a little intermission?
absolutely.
I just thought maybe you guys might want to see some Gambit figures since we haven't had any on the show yet. We go on and continue.
Gambits galore. All right, so I kind of started getting back into collecting by getting some Hot Toys. I got my first Hot Toy probably 5-6 years ago, and at this point I'm probably around 60 of them. I like to think that these are some of the highest quality figures out there. They have crazy amounts of articulation. The clothing is outstanding, and while I'm talking about this and salivating, let me take myself off the screen and actually show you some of these.
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't get much better than Hot Toys when it comes to quality. Really, the only con with Hot Toys is you got to spend some money. I mean, you're not going to find one for cheaper than like $200 unless it's like maybe a used one you might get for about 150 or so. But it's definitely for higher end collectors.
Da-da-da. Oh my God, look at that head sculpt.
Pepper needs new shorts.
So that's Tom Holland. I think that's undeniably Tom Holland. Now this is the quarter scale Spider-Man. So I zoom out here. You can see the suit and the enormous scale, the bulge. So a lot goes into designing these. The emblem there is metal even. So they come in these nice boxes. They have a slip cover. Again, just like John Cena, I never thought I would buy the Captain Marvel figures. But the display I want to make, I need each character from Endgame. So went ahead and picked her up. And then just to give you an idea of what they look like in package. Right. So these aren't real great to display in box, regardless of the glare that you see there right now.
Yeah. And they always have that little styrofoam thing. It looks like they're wearing a neck brace.
Yeah, this is not something that I'd want to put on the shelf in the box. It just doesn't do the figure justice, especially when you spend that kind of money on a figure. And
yeah,
it's
it's almost pointless to buy these if you're not planning on displaying them at some point.
They do come with a ton of accessories. This one actually has the Infinity Gauntlet, that they were carrying at the end of the film. They come with a stand. Sometimes they come with little backgrounds or little diorama bases.
But when you were mentioning the box art, I thought this was a really good box. It's Doctor Strange. So it has this little square here, turns and opens.
See, a lot of people like to display the boxes behind their figures. Again, these things take up a lot of space. So, if you're not working on a budget, but you are working in a small space, right, for your collection, then you might want you definitely want to take these out of the box. They're not meant to be left in, but then you got to do something with the boxes. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to Sideshow. So Sideshow does pretty much a lot of the same properties. They have some Marvel, they have Star Wars. Star Wars is a very big one for them. I believe they do some DC as well. There's even some horror. I think they just got done doing it, if I'm not remembering incorrectly here. So I do not have any sideshow pieces, or at least of their 1/6 figures. Did you have one that you would like to share with us?
Okay, so I picked this up at Baltimore Comic Con. I've been wanting to get a 6th scale of this character, and this one was a little cheaper than the Hot Toy, and quality is close to the same. So this is the Darth Vader sideshow. They also have a Hot Toys one. I haven't seen what that one looks like in person, so I don't know what the differences are. But this one does look pretty large, though. It looks like it's a little bit bigger than your standard Hot Toy. And I don't really want to get into getting too many of the Star Wars characters. Like, even though I'm a big Star Wars fan, there's just too many characters. But if I was going to get one, this was the one I was going to get. I might still get maybe a Luke Skywalker or an Obi-Wan Kenobi or something to go with him, or maybe even just get more of the Sith, maybe get like a Darth Maul or a Kylo Ren or something. But really nice soft goods on here, good quality. A lot of detail on the figure, but it does look like he has several different hands. There's a hilted lightsaber and then the extended lightsaber. These comes with a base.
The extra hands, are they all just the, what is it? What would it be? His left hand?
So that's one sideshow that I have. And so I did just recently get one more sideshow 6 scale figure. You'll probably never guess who this one is because I don't have any of this character in my collection. I'm not even really a big fan of him, to be honest, but whoever this guy is right here. Never heard of him? So, I do actually really like the box for this one. I like the comic book artwork on this one. It's like the X-Men #1 cover there. In there, and then the back is actually his solo series comic book. So I thought that was pretty neat. I like that box a lot. It actually doesn't look too bad. Like, looking at the photos, I wasn't a huge fan of this head sculpt. I still kind of like. I thought it was 2 head sculpts, but it's actually an extra hair sculpt, and I do kind of like that one better. It's got a little magnet on the top, so you can pull that one off, pop this one on. The jacket's actually nicer than I thought it would be. Like, the inside, you can see all that detail there. So yeah, these sideshow ones, they're almost as good as Hot Toys.
That actually leads us into the last little section here, which is other 1/6 scale figures. But there are other companies out there. I will say that their detail, the quality of the figures is not quite on par with these other two. In some instances, maybe, but there's certainly some disparities and things. The old adage is, you get what you pay for. I kind of think that sticks here with these figures.
They're not top of the line, but they're pretty good. Most of them are. Some of them have their flaws, some don't. But they also sometimes make characters that Hot Toys just doesn't make. We mentioned on the previous video that a lot of the villains, for whatever reason, Hot Toys doesn't make too many of them. So I know you've been trying to collect the Black Order to go along with Thanos. So just an example of one that I have here is this Logan. So it's actually a pretty good likeness for Hugh Jackman there. Not bad at all. So it's almost Hot Toys quality. Anything else you wanted to add about that?
No, I was going to go ahead and take us into the final thought.
Maybe we can also mention that there's other brands that we didn't talk about, like Super 7, but we didn't really have any examples to show anybody, so that's why we didn't really mention them.
All right, so final thought. So what should we consider, maybe besides just the price points and the amount of area that you have, right? Those two things are very important, but what other things can influence your decision in terms of what you want to go with here? So one thing that I thought of was, for these smaller figures, you can get these display stands, right? And so these are pretty nice. So if you wanted to do some kind of flying poses, or if you're doing dioramas, right? I think this size figure is a really good choice. It's not going to take up a lot of space, and there's a lot of availability of stands and things. This is actually a NECA stand.
Well, some figures come with those stands, but if not, then you can buy them, in any of your local stores. Like you said, you can grab those NECA ones at Target, and they fit pretty much any figure of that scale, right?
Yeah, they fit anything that's on this scale. They also work well for the NECA figures themselves. Now, for the 6 scale figures, or if you buy something like a sideshow figure, with a hot toy figure, they come typically with their own stands. Now, this is a tiny one because this is for a rocket. They have little clamps, just like that one there does. And a lot of them are dynamic. So they have a post in here that you can bend. So if you want them jumping, whatever, flying, you can do that. So you have that option for the bigger
There's
scale.
also some custom ones that you could buy if you don't particularly like the one that came with the figure. You can go online, and there's lots of people who make custom ones. Or say you bought a figure on eBay or something and it didn't have the stand come with it, then you could order one that also.
Another thing to consider, if you are doing the dioramas, there's a lot of stuff that's 12th scale. There's not so much stuff that's 6th scale. Another thing you might want to consider is when you're getting into this hobby, or if you are just starting out, one thing that I find quite enjoyable that I can't get from a hot toy or one of these 6 scale figures necessarily is going to the store and finding something on the shelf, right? It's that hunt, the fig hunt. You get that little bit of, I guess, adrenaline because you found something that's you haven't seen before. So that's another consideration. If that's something you really enjoy, if you have time to go out to the stores quite a bit, then that might be something you consider.
Plus, like, fig hunting is so popular now that it's a lot less common to actually find that thing on the shelf. So when you actually do find it, it's even more exciting that you found it in the store. You didn't have to pay extra for it or order it on eBay or whatever. You know what you're getting. It's right there in the store. And even like if you order online, you don't know how it's going to get shipped. They might damage the box or whatever. Especially, if you're going to be a mint and box collector, you definitely want your boxes to be in good shape. If you're open it up collector and display, then the box doesn't really matter too much. You probably aren't even going to save the boxes unless you just want to have them in case you ever want to put them back in the box for whatever reason. If you're moving or whatever, you're going to decide to sell them. To sum it up, like those categories on the left side there are definitely more cost friendly. If you're more of a casual collector or you're just starting out, those are probably the ones you're going to want to get. And then if you want to go all out, then you're going to want to get those 6 scale figures, but it's definitely going to hit your bank account, and you definitely need the space to display them. But right now, I would say the most popular line right now is probably the Hasbro's, between their Marvel Legends and the Black Series Star Wars. Even some of their other lines are pretty popular too. I'm pretty sure they make like Transformers and things like that. But those things are really hot right now. And there's also, don't really encourage this, but if you're the type of person that wants to flip the figures, you could buy the Hasbro's at retail price and then resell them and make a pretty good profit on them. Once they're not available in stores anymore and people want them, they're going to be more willing to pay a little bit extra for them.
Yeah, that was going to bring me to my final comment. So certainly do not condone that necessarily, or at least encourage it. We want people to be able to buy things at the same price that other people are able
not to cut you off or anything, but like if you're buying one figure and then you decide to sell it later, that's one thing. But there's people that go out there and buy all the figures so nobody else can get them. And that's just ridiculous. And then they want to turn around and sell them for double the price.
Joe, you can't just step in and say, with all due respect, and then say whatever you want after that. People should really collect what makes them happy. So right. Hopefully this review did a little bit for everyone. Even if you do already collect, maybe you might consider trying something else. If you're just starting out, hopefully this gives you a good starting point. Anything else you'd like to add, Joe?
Well, I mean, if you're already like a hardcore collector, you probably already aware of a lot of the things we talked about today. But another tip too, sometimes like if you're into like a less popular character, you have what's called like a peg warmer, like something that just sits in the shelves forever. If you wait it out, they might put them on clearance and then you can grab them for half the price, or some of them might even end up like at a Five Below for like $5. So say like the Eternals are like really not selling right now, they could potentially end up at Five Below. You get the whole line for like $30 or something. You know what I mean? So that's one thing to consider. But like we were saying, like that left category is probably where most people are going to be purchasing from. The right category is a little bit more of a niche collection. Those figures all have their pros and cons. And then, the hot toys and the sideshows and all that, that's more for the really high-end collectors. But once you get into it, they're really nice. You get what you pay for. Obviously a hot toy is going to be way more detailed than a Marvel Select or a McFarlane, or even some of the Mafex and Figuarts and all that stuff. Figuarts are kind of similar to like, they're probably the closest thing to a small scale hot toy. They're not quite as good, but detail to detail, like you were mentioning, like the Iron Man had all those flaps and things. Like the Figuarts figures have that same thing. So if you want to be a more high-end collector, but you don't want the big bulky hot toys, then Figuarts might be your best bet.
It's been good chatting with you,
as always.
I'm at a loss. I'm tired.
Just ended with a close-up of Scott Lang's head. Just 5 minutes of Scott Lang face.
Jesus. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And that was my final thought. Take care of yourselves and your collectibles.